talk,
identity,
and access
management.
Welcome to another episode of the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm still healthy. You never know, though. I think with all that's going on, there's this major coronavirus out there that it sounds like you get it and you don't know that you've got it for a little bit. Maybe it manifests in the beginning like it's a regular cold and all that. So I guess I'm joining the paranoid millions.
Well, you and I are traveling this week, so we're in Washington, D.C. And, I think, when I left Chicago area Monday, O'Hare Airport, which is one of the busiest in the world, was very opposite of that. I mean, just empty gates, lots of room to spread out. So it's definitely, taken a hit, I think, the coronavirus on travel. But even since Monday, the temperature of the situation has changed, drastically with the announcement that have been made, at least in the U.S. Throughout the course of the week. So most of the sporting leagues have decided to suspend, play, and there's talk now that March Madness might be canceled. So lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think that it's the right time to take drastic measures. I mean, there's kind of you have to kind of look at what other countries have done and what has been successful, and it looks like they've got things more or less under control in China, which, with the population of that country, you wouldn't think it would be something that would be easy to do. And yet it seems like they've kind of slowed the spread, which I think is really, it's important. So, obviously I'm not an expert, and us viewing information about coronavirus probably doesn't really add to the global wealth of information. But if you think about it like this, is that there's a certain number of people who are going to become infected with coronavirus. But if it all happens in one weekend or in one short period of time versus spreading it out, it really changes the impact on the medical system, because 100 people show up to the hospital in 1 hour or 1 day or 1 week. There's totally different scenarios. So I think it's important that we take the right precautions, and we as individuals, I think. So this would be my PSA, is that we as individuals, if people keep telling me, well, you're young and you're healthy, you'll be fine, and we can't just take the view of how does this affect me. We have to be thinking about others, and we might come into contact with people who do have compromised immune systems or of an advanced age, or we could wind up infecting somebody who does contact those populations a lot, and that would be a really sad situation. So I think we have to take it upon ourselves to make sure that we're not becoming part of the problem, even if it doesn't directly make us sick or directly, kill us.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't definitely not a medical podcast, but I think my PSA would be, if you're sick or you think you might be sick, just stay home. I mean, I know it's easier said than done for a lot of folks, but you're not helping the situation if you're spreading it around. And I kind of felt bad this week because it's also allergy season. And, yesterday we're in the client office, and all of a sudden, that morning I just started to have, probably allergies. So I'm sitting there, sniffing and sneezing. And, I told our customers, like, hey, if you're not comfortable with me being here, like, these are allergies, I feel fine. But if you want me to go back to the hotel and work, I'm happy to do that. Want to make sure that, people are okay with it. But yeah, anytime someone sneezes now, it's like, oh, that's it.
I was in the room when you said that, and she was like, no, you're fine. I'm thinking, no, send him home. Get him out of here. But
the good news is I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Like, nothing going on. So,
yeah.
So far, I think, we've dodged things, but, coronavirus definitely has had an impact on the business world, and then kind of got at least me thinking, and probably us thinking, from an identity and access management perspective, what are some of the things that, this type of situation brings to light? And the first thing that I thought of was, VPN. And I go back to way back in my history. One of the companies I used to work for didn't have a lot of remote workers. So when there was a reason to work from home for a mass amount of people, the VPN would always crash because it couldn't
Mm-hmm.
handle the number of people connecting. So it got me kind of thinking about that, and it makes me wonder how many companies that have recently announced, they want their workers to stay home, how many of those people or those companies had, the appropriate VPN support to be able to support that.
Right. Well, I mean, it may be a situation where if you haven't moved to a third-party VPN at this point, you have some kind of hardware device on your network that kind of constricts how many connections you can have. If you're in the situation where you do have that hardware dependency, you may be too late to do much, and you might want to look at something like, well, first off, you want to test it and really know um, how much traffic you can support, how many concurrent users you can support. Then you may want to look at, scheduling certain folks to have their amount of time to be on the VPN, and some people may need to only get an hour a day or something to synchronize emails or something like that. Or I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but at this point, you're probably having to prioritize that kind of connection. But it's really going to be a black eye, I would think, if appropriate planning wasn't done and this scenario wasn't kind of planned for, not specifically coronavirus, but some kind of scenario where, hey, all of a sudden everybody has to work from home, and can we remain productive as a company? And if not, but this is also something I've been encouraging clients when I do see a hardware dependency on VPN or a dependency on their own VPN configuration. So, really you ought to look at outsourcing that to a third party like an AT&T or something like that, where, you can pretty much, I think, call and increase the number of users. There's still probably some hardware dependency, but I think if you're leveraging a third party data center and people are connecting in through that, everything is kind of virtualized and you're more depending on their hardware.
Right. And if you use something like split tunneling, only sending traffic back to your network that needs to be there and taking advantage of the cloud services and connecting to them directly through the internet, obviously with the appropriate security measures still in place, like two-factor or multi-factor, right, that sort of thing, that can also alleviate some of the burden, especially since, a lot of companies now are using things like Office 365 and, Google Suite and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of my recommendation to our clients about moving to a third party VPN had more to do with security, because one of the things we find, especially with smaller companies with a smaller workforce, that they maintain um, their own VPN hardware, is that they struggle to keep it updated with the latest and greatest security and things. And yes, they might have the cheapest solution, but if you wind up getting hacked, if you wind up having security issues, um, cheapest isn't always cheapest.
Right. I imagine that if remote connectivity was not part of a business continuity or disaster recovery plan, that I would expect it's probably going to become part of the plan, pretty much right away for folks that have that in place right now.
Right.
Some other things I kind of thought about here, having been in this position from a identity admin perspective in operations, was people not having the right permissions in place to be able to work remotely. Sometimes there's a dependency on being, on the network and being able to get to resources, file shares, sorts of things, and people start to extend outside of that. You start to receive an influx of access requests, and of course everything's urgent because everyone's working from home in an emergency situation, and that can sometimes wreak havoc on an IAM operations team as well.
Yeah, and hopefully the investment's been made in the past to um, automate a lot of the access request processes and automate provisioning. Most organizations are in a somewhere in between state where they've got some automation and uh, other areas not as much. And yeah, it can definitely lead to that overwork kind of situation. I think one thing that should be planned for is I think really we have to watch for that potential spike and be able to, ask people to maybe work shifts and shift work can sometimes be more feasible when people are working from home. They might be more willing to do something like that since they don't have to, you know, be in an office and be away from their families. Um, but those are some potential options. Shift work. It's really going to be hard to maybe add people and adding people in I guess what I'm hoping is that this whole thing where people are having to work remotely and businesses shut down and the economy really shuts down is that we're looking at like a 4 to 8 week kind of situation. And it's probably somewhat rolling. I don't think everybody's going to shut down overnight, but you're already starting to see it in very public institutions like the sports leagues where they're really shutting things down, and a lot of conferences are getting canceled and things like that. It, I think a lot of office workers are going to start working remotely in the next week or two. And I think that hopefully this whole thing only lasts, a month to 2 months, and that really get the spread of the virus under control in that time.
Yeah. And I think that brings up another issue where you have people who maybe don't work from home a lot or ever, and now they're trying to log on with maybe an account they haven't used in a while, and they need a password reset. And I know a lot of companies struggle, for instance, with like Active Directory accounts and having to be on the domain to get their password reset, but they can't get on the domain because they're remote. I know I've struggled with this in the past with some of the companies I worked at. It's like, okay, well, is there an office you can go to so that we can sync down the password change essentially to your device? I haven't really seen a great solution for that yet, and I think that's one of the benefits I think of moving to the cloud for things like Office 365 and G Suite and stuff like that. But that can
Biggest thing
sometimes
that
be a
I've seen
challenge
that
too.
I think the biggest thing that I've seen that has impressed me is there are some um, like full-time VPN solutions. So once you launch your device that connects to the VPN without you even having um, to log into the desktop to get passes.
Mhm.
So in other words, it's full-time connected VPN. One thought I had as you were kind of describing that scenario is, whenever I would have my password locked out. It usually wasn't because I just forgot my password. I'm sure that does happen, but the biggest reason I would get my password logged out is that it would say your password is going to expire in 5 days. I get on 4 days and 3 days, and then it would be Friday, and it would expire over the weekend. I come in on Monday, I'd launch my computer on Monday, and I was locked out. And I think that what might help is maybe a communication to people that, hey, when you start getting prompted for password resets, it'd be really helpful if you got ahead of things and changed your password and not waited to the last minute.
Right, or maybe even do that as part of your exit plan from the office. um, I don't know how feasible it is, but for folks that are going to be going out and work remotely for a time, reset it while you're still in the office so that you don't have to worry about password expiration while you're remote.
Right. That's right. I think this is a time where probably people are coming up with a lot of these plans, but you can see where if you had kind of thought through these kind of plans well in advance. So say you were thinking about these things a year or two ago, and you start running into, okay, well, how are people going to contact the help desk? Okay, well, we need to get soft phones installed and or read on the ready so that if we need people to work from home, they could use soft phones and transfer their phone to that. Okay, maybe you don't want to pay for full time soft phone licenses, but um, maybe that's something that you would be willing to pay for in this scenario all of a sudden, or at least for people who, maybe work on the service desk where they answer a central phone number. Well, now all of a sudden you can do something like use a soft phone. The VPN question, and we talked about a little bit ago.
Hmm.
This is why you have to constantly, if you're in IT or you're in information security, be thinking about, disaster planning. This is kind of qualifies as something like that, or
Yeah.
business continuity planning at least.
Yeah, and part of that planning take into effect or take into account how it affects operations. I was the on-call person during a snowstorm in the Chicagoland area many years ago, and I got absolutely crushed. I'm dealing with 6 feet of snow. It was a blizzard in my front yard, and basically my pager at the time, just going crazy every minute because people had so many issues. And we, at that time, we really hadn't prepared or thought about how we would support IAM operations in that sort of situation. You're
Right.
used to getting maybe, one or two calls a night at most. And then all of a sudden it's, all day for 2 or 3 straight days, and trying to, filter those requests to the rest of the team to keep up with it became a real challenge for us.
And it really depends on the nature of your business, because I know probably where you were at that time, a retail operation where those calls are like, we can't sell things, we can't conduct business because we're locked out. Now
Right.
what?
Yep.
Yeah, I've worked in environments where you could you could take hours or days to fix problems, but not in certain environments, not with certain issues.
Right. And then you're part of a security team. So how do you validate these people who are calling when, they don't remember their own PIN numbers or secret questions, and they haven't, registered any of that stuff ahead of time. So it becomes a real pain in the butt from an operation standpoint. So I
You
was
know what
happy
I'm
to start to work through self-service options on that, but it's not a cure-all.
You know what I'm also wondering is that, you and I have worked from home for a long time. I've personally been working from home full time for over a decade. And I go to so many offices where they say, well, that's not our culture. I'm wondering if after all is said and done with this, if it becomes a culture more place where they say, you know what, for those couple of months we had everybody working from home and it went pretty well. Maybe we can get by with less office space, or maybe we can, give people a better work-life balance by letting them work from home, and it might work out.
Yeah, I mean, the technology is there for sure. I think it's a trust issue. I think for whatever reason, some companies trust their employees, some don't, from that perspective, and I get it. But I'm a big fan of working from home. I think you can be more productive sometimes at home than you can be in the office. Um, but I don't know if this is the right time to measure it, because I feel like there would be maybe a little bit of a false measurement because everyone else is doing the same thing, and there's already a built-in, downward movement on whatever industry it is because of all the issues going on. So it's difficult to say, oh yeah, we were just as effective when, you're if you're have any type of business right now, you're probably feeling some level of impact with the coronavirus. Whether or not, if it's not now, probably at some point, because it's starting to trickle down to more and more things with the sports leagues being suspended or canceled. I'm sure travel has taken a huge hit, right? You and I were
Right.
laughing earlier. I think we're probably the only people staying in this hotel right now.
Right.
Plenty of seats
Yeah.
available on my flight from DC to Chicago tomorrow. So,
I was going to say,
uh,
Jeff, I haven't gotten upgraded to first class very much since Northwest got bought by Delta, like 8 years ago or whatever it was, and um, I got upgraded to first class on the way home, both legs. I'm like, all right, nice. In one sense, it's nice, but in the other sense, I know it's you don't get upgraded from DC to Atlanta out of the blue.
right.
Not a gold status.
Always looking at the bright side of things.
That's it.
There was another thing too that you brought up earlier, and I'll let you have it. I want to steal your thunder, but it was around some things that might be taking place with more frequency when there's this type of situation.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, sometimes these kind of situations bring out the best in people. Sometimes they bring out the worst in people. And, I think that the number of scams go up when you have these kind of situations sometimes. And we all know that phishing attempts, I mean, everybody who's listening probably gets like attempted to be phished like 5 times a day. My iPhone, it feels like half the emails I delete are people trying to get me to log in to handle an issue for something I didn't buy or whatever. But
Mhm.
I also could see the same scammers trying to play off of this coronavirus situation. And, I think the biggest defense against phishing, again, is education. It's people don't, nobody wants to get phished, but people get tricked. And the thing about getting tricked is, you know, usually if you're getting an email about something, clicking the link puts you into the scam website. So the best thing is if you're getting asked to link to something, don't click the link. Go and type the URL in your browser or something like that. But even if you do click the link, there's ways to look at the URL to make sure that you're going to something legitimate. So now we're talking about things generally. Hopefully your organization has put together some educational materials already with regards to avoiding being phished. I know of some organizations that on a routine basis go out and ethically hack or ethically phish their own employees to find who are the people who are susceptible to this. So this might be a time where you want to do that again, right? Because I think the fear is driving people toward being more susceptible to fall for this stuff. But it's just, I guess the reason to bring it up is just, sometimes these kind of events just provide an opportunity for people to act poorly.
Right. And the phishing campaign is definitely something that is part of that whole security awareness. And all the research that I've read and seen indicates that dollar for dollar, security awareness training provides the most value. But it's something that has to be continued because threats are always evolving, and it's something that you need to continually remind your workforce of what to be on the lookout for, what to expect. If you're getting an MFA notification out of the blue and you're not expecting it, don't click on it, right? Some of it's common sense, but the awareness I think is a big part of that, and that has a big impact on the success of phishing emails. It's not going to solve it completely, but being vigilant and knowing what to look for, I think is a big help.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, so based on coronavirus, there's been a lot of different things happening with different conferences. I was at RSA a few weeks, and it was a bit of a down year for attendance already, and I don't think it was quite at the current panic level that we're seeing, but it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely accounted for. And turns out I got an email last night informing me that there were people at the conference that have been infected. So
Mm.
that's something nice to get. Octane, which is something I think you were going to attend in a couple weeks, has been canceled and converted into a virtual conference. So disappointing that you're not going to go to San Francisco, but probably not as disappointed that you won't be improving the odds that you might get some sort of issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, I don't really want to travel right now. I don't want to see. I I hate the fact that the travel industry is taking it on the chin again. And I hate that I heard about what was the conference in Austin, South by Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
I heard, they canceled that conference and then the next day had to let go of like 60 people.
Yeah.
It's horrible news. I hate hearing about that. But at the same time, it's what we talked about earlier. We want to slow the spread, or what are they calling it? Slow the curve or something
Flatten the
like
curve.
that. Flatten the curve, right? So in other words, we know this is going to spread. We want to slow down the pace at which it spreads so that everybody's not showing up at, at the hospital at once, and that we have resources that we can spread out and help people. At the same time, it is disappointing that they're not having the conferences. Not just so Octane is the Octa conference I was going to attend. I heard that Google and Facebook also canceled their conference. The really good thing about the way they handled the Octane one, and I think this is a lesson. Right? I thought they did just a really good job in how they canceled their conference. They canceled it well in advance, over 4 weeks in advance. Um, they refunded everybody all of their money. So it's not like you had to go and apply for a refund or anything like that. There's plenty of time to cancel your hotel. Now I do have a flight scheduled. They're not going to give me the money back for the flight, but I didn't feel like I was taken advantage of or anything like that. Like they waited till the absolute last minute to cancel, or they just canceled because other people were canceling. They got out ahead of it and they took care of it. I just saw that Major League Baseball suspended the rest of spring training, and maybe it's just because I'm like so locked into TV now, but it feels like they waited till the last minute. They're like the last major sports league to try and do something about it, and it kind of felt to me like the only reason they canceled was because everybody else canceled, and that they didn't want to look like they didn't care or something. But to me, that's exactly how it looked. It looked like, they waited to the last minute to deal with it.
Yeah, we got the leaders and the followers, and I don't know if you've seen this. This is something that just popped up while we were talking here. Is that they've actually pushed the baseball start date back 2 weeks for the regular season now. So things are literally changing, by the minute as these organizations try to figure out, how to handle this type of situation. And like I said, I think Okta did a really good job of keeping people informed, and so did RSA. RSA sent multiple emails ahead of time, and I still went, and there were still plenty of attendees there, over 30,000, but there was plenty of hand sanitizer, and I think people were a little more cautious around it. But yeah, Okta did a really good job. They got ahead of it, and what I like, and as part of a silver lining, is they've now turned it into a virtual conference, which is going to be free. So if you weren't able to attend anyway, now there's some free sessions that you'll be able to get to. Not sure what the details are on that yet, and I think we're looking at having Andy from Okta, one of our friends, come on the show in a couple weeks, and maybe we'll have some more information around that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Jeff, speaking of hand sanitizer, you're going to release I think you should just open source your formula for the hand
Hand sanitizer.
sanitizer that's going to take over the world.
Right. So the standard recipe is 2 parts alcohol, isopropyl, and 1 part of aloe vera, right, or gel or something like that. I think that you probably want to add maybe some bacon grease to that because everyone likes bacon, right? A lot of people talk about using like herbal essences and things like that to make it smell good, but I'm a bacon fan, so I think that would be great. I think my dogs would love that too.
Oh yeah, and I think you'd also get like a nice coating over your hand, so viruses wouldn't be able to penetrate that greasy film that you have on your hands. Jeff, I think you're onto something here.
Yeah, this is kind of like what was that like? I don't. There's some company that makes in quotes that you can't see, man candles or something like that. This could be like man hand sanitizer. There's like bacon, pizza, cheeseburgers, things like that.
Yeah, I know there's all kinds of men product now. There's one at Walmart that I saw called Dude Wipes.
Two dwarfs. Yep.
Dude Wipes, yeah.
Someone's $1 million idea that was probably on Shark Tank or
It's
something.
probably on Shark Tank, exactly.
It's like that's stupid. Nobody will buy that. And that person's on an island somewhere on a boat relaxing.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I know we've been talking for a while. Do we want to talk baseball or do we want to save that for later?
No, let's have at it, man. You know, I think this is probably working out well for the Astros and the Red Sox, who are, so just so everybody knows, so the Astros were found guilty of stealing signs electronically in the 2017 and 2018 seasons. Um, it's there's supposed to be a report coming out that the Red Sox in some way use technology to cheat in 2018. That was the year that they pretty much ran the table. I mean, they won 108 games. They were in the pole position all season long, and then just danced their way through the playoffs. And so the debate that you and I got into was, is this really cheating? I come from the standpoint of absolutely it's cheating. I'm also a New York Yankees fan, and the Yankees got bounced out of the playoffs by those two cheating teams in the last 2 years. And in 2017, they got to the final game of the ALCS against the Astros, who were stealing signs, and they lost the game in Houston. Um, and so what they were doing was they were using um, the center field camera, which is, I think, pretty much a public camera. It's what feeds the network TV with a view from center field. And they were able to then zoom in on it, and they had a TV. They had a room set up by the dugout in the Astros Stadium, Minute Maid Park, where they'd have a guy watching the signs that the catcher would be putting down. And if it was going to be a fastball, he would do nothing. If it was going to be a breaking ball, which could be a curveball, a changeup, things like that, but usually breaking balls move, he would bang on a trash can. And based
Wait,
on
so who
banging on
would
the
bang on the
trash can,
trash can?
this guy who's not on the team, he was an employee of the Astros.
Okay.
And you could actually watch some of the games where you could hear the trash can. And so supposedly, like, they showed one time where it was happening, and the catcher got up. He's like, "Okay, I put down the signs, and there's that damn trash can again."
Mm.
And I think the argument you were making was, well, first argument that I would make is that they explicitly banned using technology in game to steal signs. So they were very clear about you're not allowed to do this. But I think the thing that you were raising was, well, was their encryption not good enough? In other words, were their signaling of the signs not good enough? And the thing is that when the catcher to the pitcher signals are kind of brought back to what was encryption in 1925, and you're comparing it with, I can watch you from center field using a high tech camera, and I it's a combination of, if they put down one sign, it's obvious. If they put down multiple signs, a lot of times people are good at figuring out indicators and things like that. So an indicator would be, something like when I put down a 2, the next sign is going to be the pitch I want you to throw. So I might put down a 3, which would be a slider. Or I put down the 2, I put down a 1, it'd be throw a fastball. And so basically, any kind of form of encryption where a human being is like, we agree, before the pitch is thrown or before we start the inning on like what I'm just using my hands to show signals or my fingers, and you're comparing that with using high tech equipment. That's why they banned it. If we're saying that, hey, the catcher is going to have a little microphone and he can tell the pitch to the pitcher, or I don't know, some way he could he had like a little phone, and he could send a text message to the pitcher and say,
I'd
throw a
love to see a
fastball.
I'd love to see a catcher try to send a text message with that glove on his hand.
Yeah, I
That
know.
would be a sport unto its own.
I guess I really haven't figured out what the an exactly fair comparison would be, but ultimately what it boils down to is that you've got this encryption methodology that is based on non-technology, and then you're using technology to break it, and it gave one team a distinct advantage over the other. And to me, that's cheating. But
Mm-hmm.
more than that, it was explicitly banned. They said, don't do this, and they did it anyway.
So I'm definitely not a baseball fan, and I don't know all the ins and outs and the rules and what was banned or whatever. But from my completely layman's view of what happened, the way I see it is that the Astros were able to basically hack the teams they were playing against by figuring out what their password was. And those teams didn't do anything to guard against that. They didn't change signs in the middle of a game, or maybe if they did, they just got rehacked again. So it was almost like, the Astros were brute force hacking the signals from the catcher to the pitcher. And obviously that gives then, the benefit of knowing whether a breaking ball is coming or not. So you can lay off or, swing away on a fastball. But I put it also on the security of that conversation between the catcher and the pitcher, no different than me standing at second base watching as well and figuring it out. Or, sometimes the bullpen is all the way out in the outfield or on the baselines, things like that. So I think the catch here, and I wasn't aware of this, was the electronic use. But if I was sitting in the stands and just watching with a pair of binoculars, I could figure out the same way. It wasn't like there was, this super advanced, hacking machine that was doing it. It was someone literally watching and saying, oh, okay, I figured it out. Now let me go tell my guys what it is.
So one thing from a kind of a baseball tradition standpoint is that usually when teams throw down multiple signs, in other words, in a very simple scenario, I put down a 1, that means throw a fastball. I put down a 2, that means throw a curveball. However, when you have somebody on base, typically what they do is they'll put down multiple signs, and maybe it's the third sign or maybe it's the last sign that I put down, but that's the pitch you throw.
They'll
So
basically salt it.
it's salted, right? It's not quite hash, but it's somehow mixed up. But you only do that typically when there's a guy on second, because if there's a guy on first or third, they can't see between your legs. And so, this is baseball tradition. I think this is a sport. So there is a gaming aspect to it, but there's also a certain level of ethics expected out of the sport. It's kind of like, let's say you were in a fantasy football league and I somehow, broke into your account and changed your lineup right before the games. I say, well, you didn't set your password strong enough. Dude, you cheated. Let's be real. You cheated. Just because I didn't set my security strong enough, you don't break into somebody's account and do that. So I think there's a certain level of ethics involved.
I agree.
And
I think there is definitely the ethics part of it.
if
Should
the
you
catcher
cheat?
knew
No.
that you were using the center field camera, that was even a possibility, then they would change. They would have to do the multiple signs every pitch. And I think then if like that was the level playing field, then that would be one thing. But it was kind of like, whoa, you're doing something that we all know you're not allowed to do. Nobody else is doing it because baseball sent a memo saying don't do it. So we didn't think we had to change the signs when nobody was on second base. But apparently you didn't get the memo. Did you get the memo?
Well, I think there was also, it was kind of I don't know if it's if hearsay or rumor going around of it. So I don't think it was something that just came out of the blue. I think people suspected something was going on, and I still think that the probably could have done more to secure that communication, knowing that this has been heard of, talked about, and there was a suspicion that something was taking place, and yet they it seems like at least teams didn't really take it seriously or even do anything, or at least enough to prevent the interception of those calls and then being able to relay it back to the player.
Well, here's another thing that's an interesting angle. So MLB has decided to come out and say, we're banning the use of technology for stealing signs. You always ask the question, well, why? Why not just, you're using more technology throughout the game. You can't watch a baseball game today without getting the Amazon Web Services, StatCast information. Every play is slow motion reviewed if necessary. They're talking about having an electronic strike zone at some point. I think they're experimenting with it in some leagues. So the bottom line is that technology is becoming more and more of the game. why not, rather than saying you can't steal signs using electronics, that you just get rid of this archaic way of giving signs from the catcher to the pitcher. Have some kind of device. Obviously, it's not going to be a text message, but have something for him to send information back to the pitcher so that he can get the message and not have to worry about signs. The only thing I can say is that this has always been my feeling about baseball is that the more technology you use, the more you separate the pro game from the sandlot game, and the further the less alike they are, the less interesting it is to me to play sandlot as a little kid. When I grew up playing sandlot ball, it's pretty much the same technology that they used in the big leagues. Is pretty much none, and now we have an electronic, or potentially an upcoming electronic strike zone that's not in play today, but instant replay and all these other things. So um, it's a balance. I think it's a balance. One thing about baseball, as compared to all the other sports, is like tradition is considered sacred. When people get really mad about Barry Bonds breaking the home run record, is because like it's like the numbers that you're throwing up are just absolutely ludicrous. And a guy like Henry Aaron took 20 years to hit all those home runs, and then Barry Bonds comes along and he takes steroids and he's hitting 80 home runs a year, and it's never been done before. So that's why and people, when it comes to baseball, get more upset about that stuff, I think, than other sports.
Well, I still hold on to my premise that essentially the Astros hacked all the teams they were playing against, figured out their balls and their pitch selection passwords, and exploited it. Should they have done it? No. They used technology that was a no-no as well, but that's how I'm looking at it.
I know we're about up on time, but let's go back 2-3 years ago when the St. Louis Cardinals hired away somebody from the Astros.
Yep.
That guy came over to the Cardinals. They never locked out his account. There's a real IAM issue.
Yep.
Never locked out his account. He went back over and was somehow able to log into their scouting system with his old credentials and download a bunch of data. He got caught. The Cardinals, I don't really remember what the penalty was. It was pretty severe. I think a few people got fired over it. But, is that all gamesmanship? What say you?
I say no. I think that's clearly not on the field. And I think that was purely a reason to make sure you have good offboarding procedures in place.
I think
that's how I'm ruling that as a poor offboarding performance by, I guess it was Houston, right?
Yes. I think that's corporate espionage, and I think they did the right thing throwing the book at them. But I also think that the sign stealing is cheating as well.
I think it's cheating as well, but I think the teams should have done better at trying to guard against it. It's like saying, you shouldn't hack my password. People are going to do it. Right? Yeah. So expect to try and put some defenses up against it.
Yeah. The only difference, again, my final argument, the only difference is that this was a sport where a certain level of ethics are required, and it was teams within the same league. This wasn't like the Cold War, like Russia versus the United States or something like that. It's
right.
This is supposedly a friendly league of colleagues.
It's just a game.
Yeah, but that's what we get all excited about.
Yep, exactly. All right, I think we're in pretty good shape. We can probably wrap it up there. I know you're going to catch a flight here in a little bit. Kind of a weird show, I think, for us today, because we're kind of a little bit all over the place, talking about world events and a little bit of baseball. And by the time folks hear this, it'll be Monday the 16th, probably. So we'll see how the situation changes the next couple of days, but hopefully we gave you guys some some food for thought and some ideas on how to maybe approach some of the issues that might be coming up here with the virus impact or other things to think about. If you've got questions or comments, or you think I'm crazy about the Astros hacking every team they faced with a pitch selection, you can feel free to email us at questions@identityatthecenter.com. And on behalf of Jim, we'll talk to you guys in the next one. You've been listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. For more episodes, visit identityatthecenter.com.